What is the best place to learn bonsai? There's many places where you can learn bonsai, and this is one of them. This is a bonsai show, and at a bonsai show it's a great option to learn something about bonsai. If you don't know why, join me, I'll try to explain based on a few trees here in the show. So we're in Chemnitz, and in Chemnitz this weekend the National German Bonsai Show is taking place, and this is one of the trees. This is of course a beech. This beech, if you look at it, it looks like a massive imposing tree with a hollow out trunk. Now if you look a little bit deeper at this tree, you can see also how this probably was created by the owner over the last decade or two. Now if we look at this tree, you see that it has a massive base, right? And what you also see, it is hollowed out. So probably what's happened, this being a tree that has been growing somewhere in a field and then was chopped at some point. Side branches grew out, and you can see if you really look at the bark here, you see the places where it has healed over, there, and then new branches were grown out, and also there and there you see cuts, and there. So over time, what has happened is a tree that probably was a very big shrub was reduced to stumps, and then the branches were left to grow out. Then if you look at the branches here, you can see there's a tension wire here. There's a tiny little bit of wire to hold it in position. You can really see how these branches are laid out in layers. But you need to really carefully explore the trees that are in a show to pick something up. Now at a show like this, you have these very big trees. These are trees that are over 70 centimeters tall. Of course, you also have trees that are a lot smaller than this. But if you have these big trees, you have a lot of detail, and you can really look at the branch structure and see how these are laid out. If you look from the bottom up, you can see that there's hardly any growth here at the bottom, but you can also see, what is it, the fish grade motif of all these branches. And of course, explore the bark. You look at how they created those gins and how they worked on this deadwood. This really makes for very big imposing trees. But let's go to something a lot smaller. In fact, maybe the smallest trees in the show. And when I say small, this is what I mean. And in fact, I'm going to put my hand in view. This is how small it is. This is just the size of a hand. They built a whole room, little light on top. And even these tiny little accents, they are living trees as well. So this is a very creative show-hin display. You can look at how they've put the composition together, but let's also go to a real show-hin display in the traditional sense. And this is one of those. And what you see, there's a display of multiple trees in one casing with a nice top tree. This one is nice and flowering apple tree. And in fact, yesterday only these top flowers were open, but now over the warm night, the smaller flowers have opened as well. And here the idea is that the trees come together in harmony. You have this little accent working with the display, and also that accent works with the display, and this top tree looks down at the rest of them. All in all, very difficult to do. You need different sizes of pots, different styles of pots, different colors. All the trees need to be different species, and there's always a pine on top. The light is always a little bit difficult in these displays, but it's really gorgeous. And if you really look at each individual tree, you'll see that each of them is worthy of being a bonsai in themselves. So it is not that you have poor trees and you put them together to make a nice display. No, here everything comes together with excellent, top quality, small show-hin. One of the most spectacular maples that is there, this is the Japanese maple of the variety Seigen. They're quite rare, they're very sensitive to fungal infections, and even in Japan they're hard to find. And this is an excellent example of how you can style a Japanese maple. And if you come to a show like this, you can see these trees and you can really look underneath on how did they position the branches, how do they fan out, how did they really work on the nebari, and how did they put all this moss on there. But also pay attention to the nice table, the very nice pot, the movement of the trunk and the age of the bark. Before a Japanese maple gets this sort of bark, the grey bark, you're 20, 30 years of age. But this tree easily is 50 or 60 years. Let me see. Here it also says they have been working on it since 2019, but the tree is 85 years old. An excellent tree to see at a show like this. And naturally, this is also a bonsai in one of the biggest size classes. These are the biggest deciduous broadleaf bonsai. This is another Japanese maple in the show. This is in a smaller class, it's up to 70 centimeters tall. And just if you look at this tree, you can see the nice little gaps in the canopy. It is not just a green helmet, as they say, but it has nicely structured canopy. And that is why you always also have to look from below. Let's take a look underneath the canopy and you'll see how the branches have been placed, how each individual branch has been shaped to take a part of the canopy. And yeah, no cuts, no big wounds. Very good, excellent Nebari. I do hope the music doesn't bother you too much because there's a bit of background music, but look at this tree. Look at this wonderful snaking line there and the old mature deadwood. Nice moss. I am not a big fan of the presentation table, but hey, that's just me. I think this is too high for this tree. But all in all, a very nice, elegant display in such a small package. Now this is a very interesting juniper. The question with this tree is, of course, what do you like about it or don't like? So if I look at a tree like this, I do consider what would I do with the tree long term, and would I keep a branch like this? For me, this is not the ideal display. I would look at it in a very different way.
Cut it off. Cut it off.
But one suggestion that's just been made off screen is to just cut it all off. But the challenge in a tree like these pads, they are very difficult to keep healthy and growing, and therefore this is a perfect example of bonsai craftsmanship. Besides that, the flow is nice and elegant, but for me, I would like to have it a little bit out, or I could consider a much smaller tree. Fortunately, it is not my tree, it's not my decision to make. But look around at bonsai and think about what design could you make of this tree? Would you do the same thing? Would you do it differently? After all, there are subjective measures of whether a tree is good. This is a very good tree. And there's the personal subjective measures on what do you like. I know I am biased when it comes to Japanese maple Seigen, but this is just one of my favorite variety, and in this show there's two trees. One is a lot further, this one is still waking up, but I hope that during the show all these leaves will unfold. Again, another gorgeous tree. This is my own tree in the show, between quite some impressive trees. Of course, it doesn't hold with all the trees in the exhibition, but still I'm pretty happy that it's here. This tree has problems. There's a very heavy root here, the Nebari, which is hardly balanced out by the root on this side, which forces it to be on the right side in the pot. This is the heaviest branch, and therefore you think the movement is in this direction. But if you go all the way to the top, you see that the top is actually moving in the other direction, which would dictate a right flowing tree. I've chosen to put this on the right and have it on the left, my accent, but this top is really conflicting. I could take it out, could grow out the top, or I could grow out this top and make it more balanced, but those are future steps. This tree, therefore, is not completely ready to be in the show, but still, I want to put something in. That's how it goes. Very nicely refined Zokova. Nice. Now at every show you will find a few trees that are of a unique species, and this is one. This is Portulacaria. It's a succulent, and normally people say, well, succulents don't make good bonsai, but this is an exemption where I really like the nice big base, the good shaping of the tree. This really comes across as a tree and no longer as just a succulent, so really well done. And similarly, this Hedera is very rare to see as a bonsai. Thick trunks like these are decades old, they're hard to find, and typically you find them in a forest. As they go up, a massive oak tree, then you chop them back and you rework this into a tree, but even then it takes years and years of hard work. And this is really starting to come together. And this is where over the next hours the German Bonsai Prize, the New Talent Contest, will take place. You see all the tables have been allocated, there's lots and lots of trees here, and yeah, let's see at the end what they do with it.
Ja. Bestimmt. Ja. Nee, ich habe jetzt voll weggestattet. Unsere Antwort ist ein bisschen Lebensweise, ein bisschen Fahrradweise, ein bisschen das Winterwort, ein bisschen die Gedächtnisweise.
This is one special style of presenting bonsai where you have two trees and they are combined with the third element. And this third element is a nice ancient antique display, and it seems like it's completely out of place, but if we look closer at the pot here that is underneath this trident maple, you see that exactly the same style is also present. And of course, if you look at the trident itself, notice how this whole trunk is completely full of movement and little bends and curves, and a very nice nebari here. This is a tree that has been trained for a very, very long time to get to this stage of maturity. And from seedling, people have already thought, how do I want this to look? And of course, a show like this is a perfect place to be inspired by the creativity of some people. Look at how this rock just seems to float in mid-air with the chain hanging down. This is what I was mentioning before. You get people who go on their knees to look underneath, under the tree, to really see the structure and the design of the tree. One of the things that you may notice if you look at massive trees like this pine is it looks like there are many, many, many branches if you just look at the tree itself. But if you start looking deeper into the canopy, what you might notice is that there's just one main branch that comes snaking down and really forms the base of the whole tree. So looking at a display like this, what I always look for is on the one hand, how have they put the whole display together with the smaller tree and the bigger tree, and how it comes together with the accent, looking at the smaller tree and the smaller tree, looking up at the bigger tree. And then I go into detail and I look at what is actually in the crown. How has this tree been formed? And what you can see, this cascade very clearly has one branch going down as expected, but the upper canopy is all one big tree just coming out on top, exactly as the style defines. But look at this refinement, and this is just a regular elm. So this is a plant that is quite easily available, and yeah, just dedication, appropriate application of technique over years, create really, really impressive trees. Open offstream.
In der Mitte.
So. Aber Valentin, du hattest den auch unternommen, ne? Ja.
Den Seigen, genau. Ja, ja.